first presentation and meeting for the Field Guides program, which we're just starting up this year. Quick disclaimer, we will be recording this session for anybody who couldn't be here, wants to watch it online later, or if you want to check it out again. So if you don't wish to be on video, you can turn your camera off, but just so you know, we will be recording this and it will be available later. So welcome. I'm Janine. I'm one of the 5 members of the Field Guides Planning Committee. This meeting today is first going to introduce our program to you all, give you an idea of what we're looking to do this semester, and then we're going to dive straight into our very first webinar, which will be about applying to graduate school in EEB programs. So as I said, there's 5 of us on the planning committee. We're all graduate students in the EEB program. I'm Janine. I'm starting my 3rd year of my PhD. I work in the craft lab, and I'm interested in wildlife diseases. I'll let the other mentors hop on, introduce themselves.
Hi everybody, I'm Megan. I'm a 3rd year PhD student also in the EEB department, and I'm in the Boise Bloom lab.
Hi, I'm Amy. I'm a 4th year PhD student in Ruth Shaw's lab, and I study plant-pollinator interactions.
I'm Maggie. I'm a 2nd year PhD student in Forrest Isbell's lab, and I study how prairies adapt and react to climate change.
I'm Molly. I'm a 3rd year PhD student. I study microbiomes and microbial communication in soil.
Awesome, thanks guys. So some of you may be curious as to the name of our program. Just a quick info on that, why we chose the name Field Guides. So as biologists, we often use field guides to kind of guide ourselves through the natural world and learn about things that we're interested in and get more information in a very concise, jam-packed little book. So we are kind of here to be your field guides and guide you through the field of EEB and other related professions to help give you kind of our insider knowledge to help you progress wherever you're looking to go, and just kind of be your buddies and your mentors as you move through undergraduate research or look to move into professional fields or graduate school. So our main goals of this program are kind of twofold. We are planning to have kind of a monthly seminar series, which is kind of what you're attending right now. These will be focused programs on getting involved in research or applying to graduate school. And then we'll also have these mentorship pairings where undergrads will be paired with a graduate student to have kind of a more intimate one-on-one interaction with somebody who's been in your shoes and gone through those steps before, and can kind of help you along in whatever ways they can. So this is a big idea, is to foster community between undergraduates and graduate students in EEB and kind of related programs. Some of you may already work in labs and get to interact with graduate students, but if you don't, we're trying to kind of bridge that divide between undergrads and grads, and just give you an insider knowledge to learn about things that you might not know about how to get into grad school, how to do research, how to apply for fellowships, those kinds of things that we wish we had known when we were in your shoes. And also these seminars will have specific focuses, either goals for graduate school or research, or helping students from underrepresented backgrounds kind of learn how to navigate this science field. That's been something we're really focused on in our department. We know that academia isn't always the most welcoming place for everybody, and we're trying to show our support for fellow students and help you navigate in ways that maybe we wish we would have known when we were in your position. So all of you who are here have obviously found that this is a program that caters to you. We're interested in welcoming any undergraduate student who's interested in science, research opportunities, or potentially attending graduate school. All of us are in the EEB graduate program, so that's our main focus because it's what we know, but we're open to all majors and students. And at every stage of your career, if you're a freshman, if you're a senior, if you're working as a research tech and looking at graduate schools, we think we have something that we can help you with and kind of navigating your future. So let us be available to you in any way we can. And it's up to you if you want to, just attend the seminars and the group events, obviously kind of limited due to COVID right now, or if you want to get matched with a graduate student mentor and have some more personal interactions. So with that, we will transition into our first little icebreaker activity, just to give you all a chance to kind of get to meet each other, because these are other people in your program with similar interests that you can really benefit from each other as well as graduate students. So Molly set up some breakout rooms. We're going to hop into these groups for just like 5 or 10 minutes. Introduce yourself, your name, pronouns, your year in school, and then talk just generally about what your scientific interests are, and maybe what you're hoping to get out of this group. If you don't have anything specific you're hoping to get out, that's okay. We're glad to have you here just to explore. So we'll pop into those groups. There'll be a mentor or a planning committee member in each group, I think. Introduce yourselves, and then we'll all come back together. Okay, cool. All right, well, thanks everybody for being social even in our electronic format. So just want to throw out one last thing about mentoring. Megan will bring this up later, but mentoring is a big part of what we want to be able to offer to undergraduate students, and give you a chance to connect with graduate students to kind of more one-on-one work through where you'd like to go with this field. So if you haven't yet filled out the mentoring survey, we're looking to pair people up by the end of this week. So I just posted that in the chat. Please feel free to fill that out. And there will be emails coming soon about those pairings. Looking forward to the rest of the semester. We're planning to have these kinds of seminars about once a month, kind of as they fall in the needs for different like application deadlines and things. So you're at the one on the 24th, our introductory seminar. We'll be having one in about 2 weeks, kind of focused on the Europe program and getting involved with research on campus. And then with the Europe program, there are applications that require written and personal statements. And so we'll be having kind of a workshop seminar on those early October. So just keep a lookout on your email, and we will be sending you updates on all of these as we go through the semester. Are there any questions on anything we've done so far? You can just unmute yourself if that is easiest. Cool. Then we will transition kind of into our seminar topic for today, which will be about graduate school. If you have any questions that come up while we're in there, there'll be time at the end again to ask questions. So transition it over to Molly.
Okay. 1 second. It looks like we have one message in the chat.
Oh. Yep.
Or not, never mind. Never mind. All right, cool. So we're gonna start this part of the seminar just about the graduate school application process, how you kind of think through if you want to go to graduate school, what types of programs you might be interested in. It could be for this round if you're applying, or just even just thinking about it into the future. So we'll try to touch on some of those big topics today. But the best way to get all this information is not in a 30-minute seminar, but in like working with those graduate student mentors. So if you're thinking about that, I think the best way to kind of work through this process and apply to grad school would be to get paired with a graduate student mentor in our program. we've put together this pretty large cheat sheet that kind of walks you through the whole process. So it'll outline and break down all the tasks that are usually needed to be completed in order to complete an application and finish kind of the whole application process, which takes about a year. And so we broke down it all into like specific tasks that you can follow up on and you can work with your mentor on in this document. So this is about 10 pages and it gets into a lot of detail about really specific things like how to write a good email to an advisor, like how to format a CV, or what potential scholarships can I apply for. And so if you're looking for more specific information on a task, you should definitely check out this document. We'll send it all out to you at the end of the day in an email or like a link to be able to access it. But I think this will be a good source of everything that if you have very specific questions on. But today we'll kind of try to stay broad and just kind of touch on the big topics and things you should be thinking about as you approach grad school. And so the first thing to be thinking about is like, why would I want to go to grad school? What are the reasons to go to grad school? And so there's two big things that I think are really important. So the first is that you should be pretty passionate about research and excited to be in an academic research setting. So you should really like to do research because that's what you're going to be doing for either 3 to 6 or 7 years. So you should be very excited about that. And then you should also probably have jobs that you're interested in at the end of the degree. So your degree should be helping you progress towards a certain career point that you're interested in. So how do you know if those things are things that apply to you? So there's no need to rush into grad school. I think a lot of people think that they have to jump straight from undergrad into graduate school, but often taking a gap year or taking some time to try to figure out what you're really interested in can help you move through a grad program a lot quicker and find a grad program that's really well suited for your needs. So many students do take gap years. I took a gap year. I know a lot of other people have taken gap years, and it's just like a way to kind of take a breather after undergrad and to kind of gain some more skills and explore interests that you have. And it's definitely not looked down upon to take a couple years off. And often, like if you can develop some skills and you can come up with like topics and questions that you're really interested in, you'll typically be able to move through a research program faster than if you come in not really knowing and you have to spend the whole first year trying to figure out what you're interested in and figure out what your questions are going to be. So jobs like technicians and labs or becoming a lab manager. I know some people that have done work in like consulting or nonprofit work, just anything that gives you a little bit of break from like the academic rigor of homework and tests and research and stuff can give you some time to just take a break and think about what's actually interesting to you. So if you're worried about thinking about, I have to apply really quick, know that being able to take some time off to really think about it is actually beneficial in the long run. But if you do know and you're pretty confident that you do want to go to grad school, there's no harm either in applying straight out of undergrad as well. So if you're excited about research, there should be 2 options that you're thinking about. So either a master's, usually those are like thesis-based masters where you're going to do some research work, or a PhD program. And so there's kind of a difference between these 2 programs. So masters are typically 2 to 3 years long, and they're a little bit more career focused. So a lot of times your research work will have a little bit more application, and it'll kind of lead for you to have like a job in industry or government or a teaching at more of like a community college level. You can definitely find programs that are funded, but it's a lot harder to find funding for master's programs. And a lot of times you have to apply to the external funding yourself. It's not like usually provided through the program itself. So a lot of people use a master's degree as kind of a first step to their PhD. A master's degree is similar to a PhD. You usually do like 3 chapters or 3 big projects you work on in your PhD. And your master's can be a way to like kind of set you up to work through those projects quicker. So it's essentially like 1/3 of a PhD. You'll probably work on like 1 research project in your master's degree, and it will kind of set you up for how to work on a research question, how to develop research skills and do independent research. So it's a great step if you're thinking about a PhD, or if you know you want to do research in an applied setting like in a government agency or something like that, but you know you don't need a whole PhD to do it. And so those are all great opportunities and reasons to do a master's. A PhD will be a lot more commitment. It's usually 5 to 6 years. They're really highly focused and you focus on one very specific specialty. And generally it's preparing you for an academic job. So a lot of people do stuff that are not academic jobs with PhDs, but that's what the career track is preparing you for. So it's preparing you to become a professor and to carry out independent research on your own. And so again, this can be applied to a lot of different jobs. Most people don't actually go on to become professors, but that's generally what you're preparing to do in a PhD, and it's preparing you to teach at a university or college level. The cool thing about PhDs is usually they're funded, so you get the program for free, they pay for your tuition, and often you do get a small stipend to live off of. So unlike a master's degree, usually for PhDs, you can do it without taking out any more student loans. So this program will be focused mostly on the PhD application process, but it's similar for a master's degree as well, but we'll focus on the PhD aspect of it. So typically if you decide that you want to apply to a PhD, it'll be a year-long process. So you want to start about a year before that you would start in the program. And so we've broken down this timeline into just general seasons. So things you should be thinking about doing in the summer before, the fall before, the winter, and the spring. But there's no correct way to apply to grad school. Like if you haven't thought about it yet, but you think you want to apply this round and you haven't done the stuff that we've listed in summer, that's no big deal. You can definitely, it's very flexible. Each applicant and application is very, very unique. So don't worry too much about that. You can always be flexible in moving when you do activities, but we've like kind of outlined this timeline just as a guide to kind of help you think through what needs to be done and like what you should be working towards as you move through this process. So there's like a couple tasks that'll happen in each one of these seasons. And so generally near the start, you're kind of just looking for programs and looking for advisors. And near the end, it'll be more specific, like meeting with your advisors, writing your statements, and interviewing at programs. So today our seminar is mostly going to focus on the stuff that's going to happen in the spring and the fall. So it'll be like figuring out what your research interests are, how do you find potential programs, and how do you kind of talk to potential advisors about what you want to do and what research opportunities might be available for you. We'll also have a bunch of seminars on this stuff, and we'll talk about this more at the end, but make sure that you're keeping an eye out. We'll have a lot of seminars on writing written statements, how to handle the interview process, how to select a grad school and everything later on, and probably in the spring semester as well. If you're really chomping at the bit to get going though, you can. All of this is outlined in our info sheet, which we'll send you again. It'll have all the details for that there. So yeah, we'll start with the summer one.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk through some of the things that you might start thinking about or doing in the summer before you would start applying to grad school. So this, for those of you who might be thinking about applying this round, this might be stuff you've already thought about doing, or this could be stuff that you might think about doing next year or the year after, depending on where you are in that process. So basically in the summer, you want to decide what you want to study or get a general idea of your interests. You want to then use those interests to go out and research grad programs, and through those grad programs, identify potential advisors. And so you can really start this process in most cases by thinking, okay, what are you really passionate about? You know, what kinds of research are you interested in? And what kind of research or academic questions really, get your mind going, really intrigue you? And it's important to note that the kinds of research you're interested in don't have to be the same. They could be really highly varied. You're not expected to specialize now, right? It's okay to have varied interests and apply to different programs or different faculty because they might fulfill these different avenues or pathways of interest. And so the next step is to identify potential graduate programs. So this might start by identifying potential advisors that interest you, or maybe you find a program with many people who work in an area of interests or do something that interests you. So you can do this by finding universities that have strong programs in E and B related fields. In this case, we're talking about ecology, evolution, behavior. And this really depends on the type of EE that you're interested in. For example, you might find a university with really strong marine biology that doesn't have very good terrestrial biology, and that will really depend on what you're interested in. And so the next step is to identify potential graduate programs or other aspects of those potential graduate programs that will really hold a lot of meaning in your life. So for example, you might want to consider location. You're going to be, this is an undergrad, right? You're going to be there for 5 to 6 years, and you really have to consider what types of hobbies and interests you have outside of school, and do they actually apply in this new environment? Do you prefer living in a big city or a small town? That will really depend on, or really make a big difference in what type of university you decide to go to. And grad school often aligns in a time of your life when you want to be living it up and doing fun stuff, and maybe you're young and excited and you don't want to forget to live, right? During grad school, you want to have a good time in the way that you can. And so for example, many important decisions in your life might happen at this time. You might start a family, you might buy a car, you might buy a house, you might meet your significant other, you might join a kickball league like I did during my first year in grad school. And so you want to be in an area where you have other people in their 20-somethings that are doing things that you also like to do. And the other thing is life stuff, right? Think about, your support system, your family is really important for you to be your family or your significant other. And are you able to get around the area? Is there transit? Do you have a car? These are all really important things outside of grad school to consider. And then finally, it's really important to think about, what makes a strong program? Consider the breadth of the research program. if maybe there's just one lab you're interested in, but it's better if there are a lot of labs that maybe have similar interests that you could kind of work with jointly. And maybe, and also consider funding. So if you're applying for a master's or a PhD program, this could differ a lot, right? But you want to ask students, especially when you go visit or when you're emailing students in that program, you know, are grad students fully funded? Does this scale with the cost of living? Are you actually able to afford an apartment in this area with this stipend? That's a really important thing to take into account. And then time to degree, you know, do students actually finish in 5 years? Do they have, you know, do most students in the program finish early? Are some degrees really drawn out? These are very important things to know right off the bat. And then finally, the demographics. Do you identify with that program? Do you feel like you're going to fit in age-wise, gender-wise, race, ethnicity? You know, how does that distribute in the grad program? And especially if that's really meaningful to you, this is a great thing to know. And then finally, when you go to identify a potential advisor within that program, think about people whose papers you've read and you've really liked, or maybe people you work with now think that this person is really cool. Their research matters a lot. People you've heard about through professors or other mentors, that really makes a lot of impact to have that type of a connection. And also check out their status. Maybe this is through their website or by emailing them. You know, are they accepting students? Are they tenured? That's really important because, you know, the faculty you're interested in could pick up and move. And then, do they have funded projects to support grad students? You know, maybe they really want students, but they don't know if the department could get them any. Or maybe they have a fully funded project that's waiting for a grad student to come on board. And they're all really great things to know. So now we are going to talk about what happens in the fall.
Okay, so there are a lot of things that end up happening in the fall. So some of those things are that you'll want to organize your CV, you'll want to contact these potential advisors, begin your applications, apply for any fellowships, and study and take the GRE or other tests if that department requires it. So first for your CV, a CV is like an academic resume. It's not just one page. It should include everything that makes you great about a candidate. Your education background, your relevant coursework, your research experience, your work experience, if you have any publications, if you've given any presentations, or you have any awards or honors, or anything like that. Anything that shows that you're, you know, an organized, dedicated student that will like really thrive in this type of program, you should include, even if that's just like, oh, you gave a presentation one semester that was 5 minutes long, but you got experience out of it. Like, definitely include that. It shows that you're engaged and thinking about ways to hone skills that you'll need for the future. So next, you'll want to contact your potential advisors. You should send them a short and direct email. And I think 2 big things to note is 1, don't be discouraged if you don't hear back immediately, and don't take it personally if you never hear back. Personally, when I applied to grad school, I never heard back from a handful of people I applied to, and it's important to remember that faculty are very busy people who generally are kind of bad at email. So definitely don't take it as like a personal indictment of your skill level. But if you haven't heard back in 2 weeks, it's definitely good to follow up. Just reply to the original email, say that, oh, it's probably, you know, busy in the beginning of the semester, but you're really interested in the lab. And on that end, like, you're probably super busy the first week of the semester quarter, and so maybe looking up the academic calendar, whatever school that person is at, just to avoid that first really busy week is a good idea. So what makes a good introductory email? You should definitely include, you know, all the big things: name, your major, the university, if you work in a lab, whose lab that you work in, and just give a brief overview of your research interest and why you think the lab would be a good fit. It's really important that you personalize these emails to each lab. It's probably pretty obvious to faculty if you've just written a form email and copy pasted it into a bunch of different boxes and just changed who it was going to. So it's good to think about what you could potentially study in the lab, and then talking about your interest in such a way that it frames it like you would be such a good fit for the lab and they should definitely talk to you. And then I think it's really good to end the email asking if you can chat more about the research and what the lab is up to over phone or Skype or Zoom, just to get to know each other more. And that can be a really good way to see if personality-wise you might be a good fit for the lab, and they can see, you can talk more about your research with this potential advisee. So for beginning applications, most programs will require like background information and like a personal research statement, a diversity statement, and letters of recommendation. And so we will be having like a seminar and workshop on writing application statements on October 5th. So be on the lookout for that Zoom link. If you're not already on our email list, we can add you to our email list and you should be getting that in your inbox. You should check each program website for specific requirements. All the statements will need to be personalized, again, like the emails, but you can usually use the same structure of the essay for all of the different programs. So you should, it's okay and definitely encouraged to apply even if you don't hit the GPA or GRE requirements. Grad school application, especially in like the life sciences and ecology related fields, are generally much more holistic than say like med school where you need a really high MCAT score, or like law school with the LSAT. So definitely still apply if you don't think you have that like cutoff, so to speak, that's listed on the program website. There's also fellowships that you can apply for. Typically, they're 2 to 3 years of funding. These can be really awesome ways to make yourself a really desirable grad student. If the lab doesn't have funding for you, but you have your own funding, that's like a really awesome way to get into a lab. You'll have a larger living stipend at some schools if there's a lower TA stipend at those schools, and then more flexibility during the semester to travel and do field work if you're not having to TA classes. And it's also helpful to obtain future funding if you have funding. You know, as funding agencies see that you're like able to like apply and be competitive for funding, they'll want to fund you, and it's just kind of like a positive feedback. But we have a list of potential fellowships on our application info sheet, which we'll send out at the end of this meeting. And you can also click on the link in these slides to see that. So one of the big fellowships that a lot of people in ecology-related fields apply to is called the NSF GLFP, which is through the National Science Foundation, and it's called the Graduate Research Fellowship Program. So it's 3 years of funding for $34,000 a year. That's a 12-month stipend, not sometimes schools will show the ETA stipends as 9 months and the summer funding, but it's important to note that the NSF, that's for a full 12 months. And you're eligible to apply for it twice before your second year of graduate school, but you can only apply to it once while you're in graduate school. So it's a common fellowship to apply for when you're, you know, still a senior in college or you're taking a gap year, because that's one of the only times you can apply. So this year it's due on October 19th, 2020 at 5 p.m. Eastern time. If you're interested in applying, we highly, highly, highly suggest getting paired with a grad student mentor. NSF grants are super, super competitive, and it's really important that people are reading your statements and editing them and giving you suggestions so that you can have the strongest application possible. If you have questions about that, you can email us, or you can ask them at the end of this presentation when we have the Q&A. And then testing, so many programs are dropping the GRE requirement, which is awesome. The GRE is like kind of like the SATs, but for graduate school. So there's been a big movement to drop the GRE as a requirement because it doesn't actually predict grad school success all that well. And because it's like $200, it's a pretty big barrier for some students from low income backgrounds to actually get into graduate school. And like all testing, it's not representative of skill level. So send an email to the program to clarify if the website is not clear, and just make sure you double check. So you don't want to spend time studying and spend money on this test if you don't end up applying to a program that doesn't take it. But if you do need to take it, don't stress out about it. You don't have to study every day. You can spend a month or two studying, you know, touch up on like those little geometry hacks we all learned in high school and then promptly forgot. There also might be fee waivers available. And this is true for applying to grad school too. It never hurts to ask for a fee waiver. Like the least they can do is say no. The best, like you still have $200. So that's awesome. But in general, ecology and life science programs typically do not place a ton of weight on GRE scores. So don't, like I said before, don't stress if your score isn't right at that cutoff that they list on the website if they do require you to take it. Okay, so now moving into late fall and winter, you'll want to meet with the potential advisories that you've emailed, finalize the written statements, and then submit your applications. So meeting with the potential advisors, it's nice that everything is on Zoom now because you'll all be so used to it, but it's helpful to Zoom, we Skype, we talk on the phone with the people that you email so you can kind of gauge if their personality and yours would be a good fit. This is also a great time to ask them if you can email or Zoom with any of the current students. They should say yes to that. If they say no, that's a huge red flag. You know, if they don't want you talking to the current students, what are those students going to tell you that will make you not want to apply to the lab, right? So I think it's always helpful to talk to the current students and really get a good feel for how a certain lab program is. And then you'll want to finalize your written statements. Like I said before, we have a seminar on October 5th where we will workshop each other's statements and peer review and hone in just to make sure that they're the best they can be. And then you'll submit your applications. Usually the application deadlines are sometime in early December, but make sure you double check on all the program's websites and make sure that they're not due at a specific time. Because if they are, make sure you've got your time zones all sorted out. It'll be like past daylight savings, and you know, it's bad if you realize something's due at 5 p.m. Eastern and oh, it's 5 p.m. Central. So make sure you double check that. And then in the spring, you'll probably hear back from the program sometime in late December or January about interviews. We'll have a seminar about preparing for interviews in January. Most programs will have some type of in-person welcome week or weekend where they'll fly you out or bus you out, wherever the school is. And that's a good way for you to meet people in the program, for them to meet you. It's just as much you interviewing the program and seeing if you'd be a good fit as it is them interviewing you. Given the state of the world, who knows if those will be in person? Probably not, but we can't predict that at this point. But we will have a seminar for those of you applying to grad school this cycle. We'll have some prep seminars for you in January to prepare you guys for those if they're in person or in Zoom. And then after those interviews, you'll get an offer from the program. You can work with the potential advisor and the administrative people in the program to make sure you understand the extent of the offer. It should outline your funding, healthcare, tuition waivers, all of that should be in the letter that they send you. If it's not, definitely follow up. You want to know all that information before you commit to a place. And then you celebrate. Usually you have to select a program by April 15th and then woohoo, you're in grad school. So that was a ton of information we just threw at you in like the last half an hour. I don't expect anybody to have retained everything that we just said, which is why we have this little cheat sheet that Molly was talking about before, full of all the hints and tips and everything that was in this slideshow. We're also recording this and we'll post it to our Google Sites, which we'll also send out at the end of the day today. So you can watch this again if you want. But I think on that note, we will take questions that you guys have. You're welcome to just unmute yourself and ask a question, or if you want to send a chat either to the whole group or to one of the people that has field guides in front of their name, you're welcome to do that if you want your question to be private. One more thing, if you haven't requested a mentor and you would like one, please click on the link in this PowerPoint when we send it out, or we'll send the link again in the chat. We're hoping to have those pairings done by the end of the week. So if you could fill that out by the end of the day today so I can start working on those, that would be awesome. And then be on the lookout for an email with your mentor pairing sometime by Friday or Saturday this week. So yeah, does anybody have any questions?
I know it can be scary to ask questions in a group, which is why you should be paired with a mentor so you can ask questions one-on-one. It's a lot easier. And so I know this presentation probably seemed very chaotic and hectic because there's a lot of stuff you have to do in order to apply to grad school. And so even if you're not interested in applying this round and you're just interested in like thinking about the process, like it helps just to talk to someone who's gone through it and figure out what jobs are available, what's it like to be a grad student. And I think that's hard to give in an actual presentation. So if you do have questions or you think of questions after this, be sure that you're signing up to get a mentor.
Okay, so Haley has asked if we're planning on taking a gap year, should we not apply for your mentor? No, please apply for your mentor at any stage in your career. If you're a freshman, if you're about to graduate, we're happy to mentor you through any process, just getting involved in research or how to take a gap year. It's not just for applying to graduate school. This just happened to be your first summer because you need to start thinking about these kinds of things now if you're applying this cycle. But yeah, please apply for your mentor regardless of what stage you're at.
Cool. Well, we can plan to stick around if people want to ask questions, but if not, I'll keep a lookout for an email we'll send along that whole cheat sheet guide. I would just suggest reading through it. It's just helpful just to kind of see what we were talking about in detail. And then we'll also send out the slides from today.
And sorry, Molly, okay, I was gonna say, and if you have friends or classmates or anybody that you know who may also be interested in this program, we're always looking to add people to it. Adding a mentor may be a little more challenging as time goes on, but we're happy to get people involved. So if you have friends, roommates, classmates, whatever, who you think this program could benefit, please pass on info to them. Have them shoot us an email at the Field Guides Gmail or fill out the interest forms, and we will get people rolling. So even if they missed the seminar today, they are welcome to be a part.
I'll also add in the question vein